Continuing with the Mets front office, out with the old and in with the new, the Mets now have two coveted front office positions to fill. Since David Stearns was announced to be brought in as the Mets' first ever president of baseball operations, his desire to bring in his own staff has remained true. As for the manager position, the top name mentioned has continued to be Craig Counsell, the former 16-year journeyman player who has been the manager of the Milwaukee Brewers since 2015 and was inherited by Stearns when he was promoted as the Brewers president of baseball operations in 2019. Counsell's contract with Milwaukee has officially expired as the free agent manager is available to seek other managerial jobs coming next month. Although the speculation has grown that Counsell is Stearns' number one recruiting choice, the Mets' new president of baseball operations has said that he has no one in mind and the Mets are going to cast a wide net, explaining that he looks to interview candidates who have managed and candidates who have not managed before. Other names that have been mentioned have included Astros bench coach Joe Espada, ex-Giants manager Gabe Kepler, Padres bench coach Jack Flaherty, Dodgers first base coach Clayton McCullough, and even current Mets bench coach Eric Chavez. As for the potential replacement of Billy Epler, Andy Martino reported that the Mets have yet to settle on a timeline for hiring a new general manager as they shift the current focus to fill the team managerial position before the winter meetings in December. The new manager position, doing this every goddamn year.
I mean, that's the way I feel. It's just the fact that we're constantly talking about this too. I mean, how many more times are we going to talk about, get a manager in here? And to me, it's like, I'm not too crazy about Craig Counsell, to be honest with you. I mean, I think that just because you have David Stearns doesn't necessarily mean that you need to have Craig Counsell. If Stearns and Counsell never made it work in Milwaukee, why would I have confidence that they would make it work here? You know what I mean? I just feel like, well, Milwaukee has done very well for themselves considering the budget that they operate with. That doesn't necessarily mean you need to copy every single thing that they do because they're not that great. Like, they're not Tampa Bay. Like, they're not the best, small market team. So I would say that for me, you just need to find the guy who is the best all-around fit. And again, I'm looking for someone long-term. Like, even if there's a report that Joe Madden wants to interview, I don't care. It's not a long-term solution. We just did this with Buck Showalter. I want someone who is younger, who relates to the players much better, who was a player not too long ago, who understands the rule changes and things like that, and tries to utilize the youth more. I mean, we'll see if Stearns is also of that mindset because it just felt like this past Mets team was just so old and slow and boring, and they just didn't mesh well with the exciting teams that you see that have so many different things going on. Like the team, it had a very old feel. Like, I want to see the young guys play more. I want to see Vientos play more. Mauricio play more and see what you have in these young players and not stick with these old guys who just are not getting the job done. So I want to see them get a manager that kind of has that kind of mindset. Is Eric Chavez that guy? Maybe, I mean, like, he's younger. He's known the players a little bit. Like, I consider him, but I think all in all, you just kind of got to see what the other options are out there. I'm not, oh my gosh, automatically get Craig Counsell. Let's see what other managers may kind of free up once the postseason is over. Because, again, it's just like the postseason just started. So, I mean, there could be some other options that become available before they end up making that decision. Because I think you got to find someone who is on the same page as the general manager. So you're not having these disputes of, oh, I want to play this guy. You want to play that guy. I mean, you got to have everyone kind of be in sync here. So I do want to see a manager who does have more of that newer mindset because it just felt like the game kind of passed the Mets by this past year, especially with all the rule changes. And they just looked like they were playing a different sport. So for me, that's my main thing. I don't have anyone particular. I just really want to see someone much younger because I want to do long-term. I don't want to have a manager for 3 years, then we got to get another one. I want them to find their guy to have for a long time because the Mets have gone through way too many managers, some of the GMs, in a short amount of time.
There needs to be a just symbiotic relationship for whoever from top down. So and the fact that Stearns made it clear that he would hire a first-time manager makes me believe that he's going to be a first-time manager. It's not going to be Counsell. It's not going to be Madden. It ain't going to be one of these guys. Look kind of the playoff teams. Besides, obviously, the juggernauts, all these other new playoff teams, the Orioles, the Diamondbacks, They got fucking nobody that you've ever heard of be their manager. And can the Mets find their version of that? That's up to David Stearns to be. So I don't really care at this point. I just need to get one timeline with one just kind of goal. If it's like if we're going to be competing. If we're playing the kids, we're playing the kids. One from the top down. Do I care if it's a guy who's got managerial experience or not? Just give me a guy who's willing to work with Stearns and just be on the same page. Because again, tired of seeing these types of things where it's like, oh, this guy's fighting this guy. Like we've been there, done that. Just I'm tired of this. Well, we hired a really old guy with a young guy, or we hired in the manager and GM's perspective. Just keep it all on the same page because managers don't do much anymore. It's just a yes man that a GM. Just give me a guy who just, okay, I'm not saying write the lineup card. Have some feel for the game. Yes, I don't want a freaking clone like Kevin Cash where it's all the numbers. I don't want that. But I want a guy who can look at the numbers and say, okay, look at that. But also, Jose Barrios, hey, my guy is going off right now. I know you want the lefty-lefty matchups. Let's wait a batter or two before that jumps to that conclusion. So again, I don't want a full puppet, but I want a guy who can just, you know what? Stearns and I have a common goal. Let's get to that common goal.
Yeah, I've talked about this already. No more old people. Old people need to be gone from this organization. I've had enough. I personally believe that if the roster is as good as it is and it's deep from top to bottom, the managerial position does not really matter as much because you have tons of options. You're obviously listening to the analytics department above you. All I need is a manager that's just adaptive. That's literally it. And they're not the 20th century. I need somebody who is able to pivot, who's able to make the moves necessary, go with a more adaptive approach in the dugout. I don't want to see any more managers who are like, I like this guy against lefties. I like this guy against righties. I think that, we're going to bunt here. We don't bunt anymore. We don't do that. This is 2023. I need to see a manager put their best starter in for game one. I need the manager to put their best reliever in when they need a strikeout from their reliever. So that obviously comes from more roster construction, but for what the Mets have and for what the Mets could possibly gain from Stearns' player development, I just want to see these players be utilized the way that they should be. And obviously the Mets need to bring up that pool of talent, of course, but I need to see some fluidity between the general manager and the manager. And obviously it's just at this point, the front office, I just need to see everyone on the same page. And that may sound a lot more simple than you think. It's a lot harder to come by, especially with how the Mets have been recently. Andrew, do you have anybody that you would prefer to be the manager, your number one guy?
Again, for autographs wise, Beltran. That's the best option for autograph wise. And that's, again, he's in the front office already. So, I mean, and he was hired. He's undefeated as a manager. But I don't care. Like, if it's Council, cool. If it's Espada, I wanted Espada instead of Buck 2 years ago, so I wouldn't mind that. I wouldn't mind a bilingual guy, too, which, again, with a Puerto Rican star, and he's all pissed off. Oh, you fired Buck. Bringing a Puerto Rican to make him kind of like, that might not, again, you're pleasing one player
even
instead
though
of 26.
he wanted Espada anyway. So
yeah,
I mean,
exactly. So
I'm not totally against Beltran either. I mean, like I said, I think they do need, again, someone younger, someone who played the game, bilingual. I mean, I think Beltran, he's more of the kind of guy we look for instead of, this older guy. I think, I'm more of also the belief that, just because I was using the example, I hate to pick on the guy, but don't bring in Sean Gilmart against Bryce Harper. You know what I mean? Like, just use your best pitcher against the other team's best player. The lefty-right thing should not matter because if I threw left-handed, does that mean that you should use me instead of using, Bryce Montes de Oca? Like, no. You have to actually, use your best players instead of just guys because they're lefty, because they're righty. I've always find that to be just the dumbest thing that a lot of managers get very, very hung up on nowadays.
Yeah, and they tried to get rid of that, obviously, with the 3-batter minimum rule thing, but it just still seems like a whole ridiculous. I don't care. Just give me the best hitters. Give me the best pitchers. Like, I don't fucking care if they throw with one hand or the other, or they jack off with another hand. I don't care. Just put them in the damn lineup if they're good and they have the best position to succeed. I mean, Joe Espada would be great, in my opinion. I think that he's done a pretty good job with the Astros. Obviously, it seems like a lot of players respect him. Beltran, I feel like I would be open to it. It's not my first choice, again, obviously, but I would be open to it because it seems like there is a lot of guys in that Mets clubhouse, specifically, especially one of the leaders in Francisco Lindor, who really respects him a lot. And listen, I'm not against Carlos Beltran, but I think that at one point, I just don't like things to be a distraction. And we know that we have
that's fair.
Bring him any attention. We have this whole case with
Espada come from the Astros organization. I mean, I feel like you can make that criticism with anybody. You know,
was he with them when they were cheating?
Yeah,
I thought that was Alex Cora. Wasn't he the bench coach?
Well, Cora was part, but I think Espada was still on the staff. He's been with the Astros for a while.
Yeah, he was a first base. He was first base, then the bench coach, some shit like that. He was in the tree.
I guess
he was in the tree.
I guess mainly because
and again, I mean, Cora's done so
face.
well that it doesn't really bother me. Again, like if you're gonna win games, then go for it.
I mean, but we have seen what Detroit did with AJ Hinch. So I mean,
no, that's true. Yeah.
I do have two random names that I don't think are going to get the light of day. I think one
Wally
of them
Backman is not an option. Please stop.
No, I'm not saying Wally Backman. But one guy is waiting for a certain guy to get fired in St. Louis. The Puerto Rican coaching staff, meaning Yadier Molina, Carlos Delgado. Both guys have been coaching in Puerto Rico right now. Again, I think Molina is waiting for what's it called to get fired because he sucks. Mm-hmm. But everyone's giving the Beltran love. Delgado's has been coaching in Puerto Rico. He's on the WBC team this year. He has coaching experience, unlike Beltran.
I would be totally for
I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, plenty of managers make good managers. I mean, that's kind of one of those old sayings. And Yadi was a guy who had much more baseball IQ than most players. I mean, he was always known for that. And he would, I feel, connect really well with a lot of the guys in the dugout in the clubhouse. No nonsense kind of guy. I mean, I'd be all for it. I mean, if he were available, I'd be willing to give him a shot.
I mean, Delgado is also a relationship that kind of needs to be repaired with the Mets, in my opinion. Yeah. And for some reason, it hasn't been. And I don't know if it's going to be bringing him on as a manager or, they bring him in. But was he at Old Timers Day? I don't even remember.
I don't think he was.
There?
Was he? No, I don't think he was.
I thought he was. Check the tape. Post that.
There is a few players that have not been involved in a lot of things with the Mets ever since they left. And, Delgado is one of those guys. I'm not saying that's the reason why you need to hire him as a manager. But, if it's a guy who does know the organization, obviously the organization has changed a lot since he was here. But all I can say is that, if you want a former player, I mean, you could look there. I know everybody's been talking about David Wright forever, but that's never going to happen. I saw some stuff about Daniel Murphy being a hitting coach. No, thank you. Obviously we'll have that connection to that. And I am taking the Vegas odds of plus 10,000 for Keith Hernandez to be the next manager of the Mets. I can't believe he was actually on there. That was hilarious.
Hey, Wally's a free agent though. When you brought him up, the Ducks let him go.
Yeah.
I mean, he's probably drinking and driving again. But
I think he probably is, but I think at this point he just needs to retire. At this point, I love Wally. I think he's awesome, but you got to aim younger in this situation. And it's like, if
I wouldn't mind him as a bench coach, like just involved in the organization, but not.
No, here you go. Here's the perfect way to get this locker room set up. Wally as the manager, Dykstra as bench coach.
Oh God,
yeah, that ain't happening. He's not allowed on the premises. That ain't happening.
Paul LaDuca as the hitting coach.
Paul LaDuca as a manager would be the anti-Rojas, I can just say. Let me just say
again, that. I'm not against it either. Another catch.
We all know he still has the fire for that. So, and as for Eric Chavez, I mean, obviously it's somebody that you could consider. And there's a lot of people in the industry that believes that he is a future manager. That was the main reason why they brought him to being a bench coach. To be honest, I think that he goes as well. I think that either whether it's this year or next year, he gets a job to manage some team.
Okay.
I don't know if it's going to be, a team that just fired a manager or, they're just looking to move on from somebody, Angels, White Sox. I mean, whatever team it is out there that just fired somebody and is looking for someone who could go through the system. I do think that Eric Chavez, eventually he will be leaving this organization to manage some other team. I do believe that. Would he be my style of manager after what I saw as the hitting coach, that is, as his hitting coach, which was the most unsustainable piece of shit I've ever seen? No, but I think that at one point he is going to get a job somewhere else. If it is here, doesn't seem like he's a Stearns guy, and Stearns wants to bring in his own guy. I think it's going to be a lot more external than internal. I think the Mets have had enough internal blunders for them to not go outside of the organization and bring somebody in as the manager.